So Moyo is a name that refers to a love for the environment. Eco is short for ecology. Moyo means heart in Swahili. So we're kind of like founded on green values, wanting to bring that forward to the next generation. The way that we decided to build the school was basically a result of architect students who came to build the first classrooms. So they had a competition within the class, and the winner had those half-moon classrooms that you've seen at the school. And once that was set, it kind of set the design for a lot of the other buildings. So the color of the plastering, the way we painted afterwards, that kind of became like a red thread for many of the buildings. So I didn't really have a very clear vision of what we were going to build. I just really wanted to incorporate inside and outside. So I wanted a lot of ventilation, a lot of natural light, and I wanted to play around with organic shapes, which is what I learned later, a nightmare to work with, although it looks really nice. When I started working with some kids back in 2014, we were based in Mombasa. The idea of creating our own school was taking shape, and we were renting a few locations here and there. It was a nightmare, so I really felt like we had to buy our own place. Everything around Mombasa was so expensive. So we looked around here and there, and by chance or not, we kind of stumbled upon this place on a way to be on safari with my family. When we were looking for a shamba, I had taken my permaculture course, and I had this idea that I wanted to have a slope for the plot, which I later came to regret. I guess you can say that the site has influenced the design in terms of, just conditions like temperature. Okay, we have a lot of termites, let's not use that much timber, or conditions like that. So we've used a lot of materials that we've kind of, tried and failed, or tried and succeeded. Because we have a big plot, we also have the freedom to make each classroom an individual building, and that's kind of how it was funded as well. So people who got on board, they would pay for that classroom, and then that was a project in itself. So, had we chosen a design where everything was connected, we would have needed a lot more money at once. But I also wanted them to have, green spaces in between, and, a lot of air and ventilation, and also privacy, so that if PP1 is singing, grade 2 is not affected by that. I mean, I must say I'm very much involved in all the building projects. That is because I have now been a part of all the projects as well. So as soon as someone has questions about something, it's natural that it goes to either Jan or me. And typically there will be that conversation that you would have between the engineer and the architect, where the architect wants to do something fancy, and then the engineer is like, that's not very practical. So trying to find that, balance of like, okay, we want to make a really cool classroom, but it has to be functional and not just like beautiful and fancy. And I think a lot of architects are tempted to use, sometimes materials that look really cool right after it's been built, and then 6 months down the road, it's like, okay, that's kind of fading, that fabric needs to be cleaned every 2 months, so trying to find that middle ground of like trying to be experimental, because that's been a philosophy the whole way, is trying to be experimental with materials. So like using makuti as walls, not just the roof, right? Playing around with materials and not just use them the conventional way. A lot of things have not worked out, and like we have a huge butterfly roof as a classroom, and that gutter has been a nightmare for like 4 years. So you live and you learn, but it's playful and fun. Like right now, I mean, we've established ourselves quite well as a school in that area, but there's something about setting up these really fancy architectural things, and then your neighbor is living in a mud hut struggling to get drinking water. That contrast is something we've talked about a lot. Like, is that ethically, how do we deal with that? But at the end of the day, you know, the school is a safe haven for our students, and the community is benefiting through working for us for different projects, and the kids are there for free. I'm not bothered by that anymore, but there was a phase where we were like, is this a little bit too much? Like, can we justify doing this here? You know what I mean? The students are quite used to the place now, especially the young ones that have always been there. So in their heads, that's what school is, right? But for the teachers and the older students that may have come from other schools, I think they would really say that this is a very conducive learning environment. They're always using that word, it's a conducive learning environment. And it is, right? Because it's quiet, it's in nature, there's colors. And I think, you know, when you are a child, or even just as a human being, you're very much affected by your surroundings. So if you sit in a white square room for your first 8 years of school, versus being in an environment that has different shapes and colors, and you know, I think architecture and space affects the way you feel and think. So hopefully we can, you know, be there to kind of challenge what a school looks like. It doesn't have to be a horseshoe with square rooms, right? It can be more colorful. We are focusing on sustainability, you know, for several reasons. Number one, we have to conserve water because we don't really have a lot of water on site. Our boreholes are filled with salt water. And also to set an example for the students, you know, because if you learn how to make compost or collect rainwater, or you've been in an institution your whole upbringing that uses solar power, you know, you're going to take these things with you and know that they're possible. The whole sustainability thing has been there because of that, but also, you know, that's the ethos of the school. We really, and sometimes I wish we could also use even more sustainable materials. Like we still have a lot of concrete, you know, foundations, and we have really tried to think about other materials, but as soon as you branch into more organic stuff, they deteriorate and they rot, they get eaten by termites, you know, mold comes. So there's that whole balance between using something that is long lasting and durable, but also trying to use something that's natural and nice looking and comfortable and sustainable. I wouldn't say that we are not going the normal route at all. And a lot of the choices we make are there because of the conditions. So for example, I really wanted the whole school to have compost toilets, but that's completely impossible to have 200 students every day using compost toilets and all that sawdust that you would need, and the, you know, so, and then you end up making a pit latrine, which is not the best thing to do, but it's like we don't have water, you know, so we have a lot of choices that are made from, you know, the restraints of where we are. You know, water conservation is really important, and just the fact that we maintain our trees, because a lot of people that buy a land, they will cut the whole all the trees, then start building, you know, but we've built around the trees. So we've deliberately chosen spaces for the buildings where there are no trees. So on a few occasions we've had to cut 1 or 2 trees, but we really want to show our students that trees are important, because they are, right? Like the water table rises, you know, it cleans the air, it creates shade, it's good for the birds and the microclimate. So everything is there trying to set an example for the students. I think I can say that because it's not that sustainable. You know, we're still using mabati, concrete, coral stone, cement. You know, if we had been a place that was using, you know, just mud and makuti and timber and, you know, makonge, if we were just doing that, I think it would be a different, you know, thing to talk about. And sometimes I wish we did do that, because if we had just gone full natural, we could have built things up much more quickly, but we would have had much more maintenance. But that could have also been okay. And that's what I've realized with the village that we're in, is that, you know, everybody repairs their mud house in the rainy season, and that's a part of the yearly event, right? So, you know, we could have also done stuff like that, but, you know, jiggers is a huge problem, so we would have to have a concrete slab anyway. You can't just have an earth floor. And as a school, there are also limitations in terms of building codes, you know, and the spaces needed for the children and hygiene things. Yeah. The fact that we've been able to build all these amazing structures, it shows that we are able to follow projects through. So I feel like the architecture has given us some kind of alibi that we are different and we work hard and we can follow through. So that's been very beneficial, and that it's unique, you know, it's not the typical horseshoe school.